mitigation? Come on, Eric, all you gotta do is say a few words. You wanna do it or not?
Words. No.
Words? All right.
Going up, right?
Good evening. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You sure? Okay. All right. Let's open this up to any public input. Once, twice, three times, sold. We are now going to turn this over to Graydon Dutcher from Soil and Water to do a presentation on flood mitigation. You want to light off the...
No, if you guys are good with this, I am. I go this side, Lillian, you'll be all right. Okay, thank you for having me here tonight. This is the same presentation that I gave at the Town of Walton meeting last month. But basically what we thought it was time to do was look at flood mitigation in the village and town of Walton. Since we formed the Flood Commission 10 years ago, where have we gotten and who's been involved in doing that? So if you look at our time frame, flood of 06 happened here, and you can see that by year we have listed out every single project, including future projects and what we have on the list moving forward. To give you an idea, we're going to go through these piece by piece, so you'll get real dollar signs on these and the actual linear footage of mitigation structures. But we formed our Walton Flood Commission in April 20th of 2010. And that was important to us because that really changed the dynamics of how we looked at flood mitigation, not only in Delaware County, but many of the counties around us, including the state. And what it did is it really put everybody on the same page with a common goal. And that really helped us out a lot as far as funding goes, which I'm going to show you here. Working within the town, not necessarily, the village didn't necessarily know what the town was doing, and vice versa. The town didn't know what the village was doing, so we could have competing interests for same properties that could be flood mitigation. So it was very important to us that we formed that flood commission with all the technical agencies and all the municipalities, including state agencies, involved to bring these projects moving forward. So since 2010, we've implemented in Walton alone 4.971 million in projects. And I'm going to show you in detail where those are. Keep in mind, this is only with our Soil and Water Conservation District staff, our stream program staff. This is only one of the municipalities we work in, but it's got a lot of attention since 2010 because Walton's on 4 floodplains and needed the most help. The other ones are Margaretville, obviously Delhi, some of our other bigger municipalities, but Walton really has the most parcels in harm's way when it comes to flooding. This is important fund total right here is a 3.79 million. That's all an outside grant funding. That would be WRDA grants, Water Resource Development Act grants, which is federally based. They could be EQIP grants, which is state funding. And the balance of that comes out of our New York City contract with our stream program directly with our Delaware County Soil and Water Conservation District. So FEMA is a declared event. You guys are familiar with that when you have floods that hit. Word I just described. SMP for us is our stream management implementation program. So those are all soil and water conservation dollars through our city contract. Open Space Institute was a not-for-profit that bought the parcel behind Westbrook. And EWP is another one that we use, which is through the NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service, and that is also flood-driven expenses. So starting in 2010, this is East Brook County Route 22. This is the old Signs Barn right here. You can see that approximately 50 feet, they put in a floodplain bench here, grade control on the bottom of the channel, as well as toe hardening, and then planting. This was a FEMA grant. They paid for $330,000 of that, and the balance was paid through DPW. Our partnership with Delaware County, DPW, and Wayne Reynolds, their forces put this together and built this. But what was going on in East Brook is after the bulldozing, after the 2006 event, this was starting to down cut and all these slopes were starting to fail. So it had to be re-elevated and grade controlled. This is Pines Brook outlet protection. This culvert used to be a perch culvert, and a perch culvert means basically the bottom of your culvert, the invert of your culvert, is way above your stream base elevation. It's a problem for environmental concerns because you have no aquatic connectivity. Fish can't go through it, aquatic organisms can't go through it. More importantly, that means that downstream, this is actually down cut and could actually threaten your road. So we re-elevated this and stabilized that at about $8,500. Robinson Brothers did the work. Westbrook floodplain, this is out behind Snowco. This is the floodplain being inundated just during a bankful flow. If I say bankful, basically that's the natural flow every spring runoff that basically sizes your channels and your floodplains. So it's doing what it's supposed to do, and now the water is not going over the wall through the bus garage. Hydroseeder purchase was purchased through the program and is managed by the town of Walton. Basically, it's available to any of the municipalities within the watershed. We supply the materials to the town of Walton. Town of Walton manages this, and any of your open ditches or seedings that are required by law, they can actually apply this to, and it doesn't cost the municipality anything. Materials are paid for, it's just their time and labor. And they've done 204 acres to date. Emergency watershed protection, this is EWP funds through NRCS. We did a bunch of projects in Walton. We did 8 different project sites, and they're all broke out here, from Baxter Brook and McGibbon Howell, East Brook, Marvin Howell. A lot of these were very similar to these type of failures where the bottom of your stream went down and then your banks fell into it, and a lot of times your road is at the top of this slope. So those funds were basically to protect the stream, re-armor the banks, and reestablish roads in a lot of places after the flood. Beers Brook on Site 1. Beers Brook was a corridor that was taken out in 2006, and basically the road and the stream were put back in place after the 2006 flood. Basically the stream ran right down the center of the road. The road was actually missing. When they returned it back to where its previous condition by the FEMA rules, a lot of times your stream didn't want to be in that location, ended up down cutting, and therefore we have a few different sites on Beers Brook where we had to rip-wrap the bench and stop this hill slope from actually failing, plugging the stream channel off, which then would take out the road. This is on Beers Brook Site 2, same concept. You're hardening the toe, putting the floodplain bench in, stabilizing this and seeding it to keep that from failing into your stream channel. And then once again, taking out the road on this side. Third Brook restoration was a big project, massive project up Third Brook. Third Brook has got 8 big, massive failing slopes. They're all big rotational failures. So if you look at a rotational failure, from the top of the hill to the bottom of the stream channel, the whole hill is rotating into that channel, and the stream is mobilizing that as it goes. A lot of those hill slopes are actually, the rotation is about 65 feet deep, if you can imagine. So you have 65 feet of material by about 100 feet high rotating into the channel. It's almost an unlimited amount of material. And what that would do is basically plug Ogden Street Bridge, plug the Third Brook Bridge underneath County Route 10 or State Route 10 right ahead of Craft, and that would have to be either maintained or dug out on a regular basis because you basically would have had an unlimited amount of supply that stream would move. So the approach here was more hardening of the actual bank itself. We use these willow wattles, which are basically coconut fiber wrapped logs to break up that hill slope so that the runoff couldn't go directly down it as fast. We're probably not going to use those in the future. We want to try them there to see what they look like. When these things get wet, they are 500-600 pounds a piece. And it's just a matter of time before these actually start to fail and slough. We knew that was going to happen. We were hoping that vegetation that was driven through these would actually take off and grow up through them. Didn't get enough time before they got super saturated and failed. But we planned for that, and then that's why this wall's got a bench on the top, and those things are quite stable now within Third Brook. And that was just under $500,000 on 4 different sites. Third Brook, a continuation emergency repair. This is one of those big failing banks right here. It's hard to see, but that's actually a 14-foot high rock wall. And this rotational failure right here, the seam is way back up here, where that's actually failing and cleaved off and rotating into the stream. Veterans Plaza was one that you guys and the town worked together to take out the old Reporter building and then create one of those flood relief channels off to a new floodplain. We used to get picked on a little bit once in a while because this would actually hold water. We knew it was going to hold water, and I always heard, oh, you guys build a beautiful ice skating rink and a pool, and we know, we got it. We got the cart in front of the horse, but basically the funds were available to take down this building, create that green space. We didn't have the connectivity to the floodplain because the floodplain on the opposite side was about 10 feet higher in places than what this would allow to drain. So we put an intercept drain in the back, which was just cobbles. It would drain down, but it'd take about 24 hours to do that. But now that's connected, you won't see any more of that rainfall standing in that area. So it's more usable space when we're done. Ice House boat launch. This was cast in place concrete to facilitate recreational uses. In the spring, we plan on putting another one in on Water Street to have another boat launch there. That's going to be a different design. It's going to look more like the Delhi boat launch we put in. It's going to be approximately 10 feet wide, single slope slab going down to the stream, so it'll be very accessible for fire, emergency. If you have to get in there, airboats or anything like that, it's going to be a lot more accessible than this type of style here. But to meet the topography of this area, we had to put that in to be ADA friendly, to get that to a slope that was stable. Eastbrook, some of these are some videos flying. We did a few emergency stream intervention projects. Eastbrook was flowing down through here, through the field, basically right between this area right here and Jim Rice's house. It brought the water table up and was actually flooding his basement. And the stream was not flowing in its current channel. This got plugged with willows right in here. Our team went in there, resized the channel and redimensioned it and returned it to its normal pattern as part of a project to demonstrate proper channel sizing. But that was up Eastbrook. This is a Beersbrook grade control again. This is the third time we've talked about Beersbrook grade control, but this has got hardened riffles, what we call hardened riffles in the bottom of this channel. You can't see them when we're done. That's more the natural design approach we're going to nowadays. Instead of having those big fall off rock veins, we're going to structures more like this that don't create that big jump, hydraulic jump in the stream. And then this is all planted in here, interplanted with willows, and then graded back off for your shoulder. Didn't want to do what I wanted. Okay. I should play. So this is a 4x8 culvert right here that drains the new green space into this point right here. The lowest point in green space is here. We expect rainwater from 3.8 acres of runoff to go down through this swale and return to the west branch of the Delaware. This was under construction. You can notice that there's different pockets of material removed. The outside band was general fill. The inside material was a limited fill that had to go to the landfill. And then the stuff in the middle was a restricted fill, which most of it ended up on Chase Brook as a shoulder improvement and the Village of Delhi to their new access to their park up Steel Brook. And that agreement we had with Delaware County Municipal Waste up there with Sue McIntyre saved this project like $380,000 by that relationship, by having them take in that material that was limited fill. This is what the box culvert looked like, cast in place. Reynolds Construction cast it in place. Jonathan Lefevre was the contractor, GC on this, but a box type wrapped and then opened up for traffic. This is what it looked like finished from the air. This is in our high water event. You can see the ditch back to here did not back up into the green space with that event. This was more than a bank full event for us. This wall on South Street, the top of that wall is actually set for your 100-year floodplain. So on a 100-year event, the top of that wall would just the water would just be the top of that. This whole park would be inundated down through there if we saw a 100-year event. The park gets inundated from Delaware Street that way. It's not going to back up into the park. It's actually going to be out by Eastbrook before it gets to that point. But that project alone lowered your 100-year event on Delaware Street by a foot, which if you think about 28,000 cubic feet per second, or 28,000 suitcases of water going by you per second, that's what you're trying to mitigate against, and you lowered that by a foot.
The 100-year event is the 96 levels as opposed to 2006?
Yep. This is South Street going in under construction. So you can see that was the driver that vibrated these sheets in. Me personally, I hate sheet piling. We don't use them in stream restoration in any way, shape, or form. Can't stand it. It's nowhere near natural. It doesn't belong in and around our streams. We had no choice here. These soils were so poor that had to be sheet piled. Those sheets right there are 40 feet. There's 33 feet in the ground. There's 7 feet out. The soils were a silt loam that basically every time you got them wet, they basically they turned to soup for the most part. There's no rock in there any way, shape, or form. They vibrated those sheets down in there at a quick rate. There's no stability in that soil at all. So you have to have 30-foot sheet below the ground to hold up 7 feet of bank. The problem and failure along this area right here was every time it got wet from a larger flood event, on the recess, the actual water would pull itself out of the bank and pull the material with it. And we found locations here that this property landowner's tax maps were usually to the center of your channel. They're like 85 feet out there. So they lost a lot of bank through from 1905 on, they've lost a lot of bank in that area. And that was just over $1 million in construction. These are all new plants right here. You can see all these little dots are new plants. We let our landowners pretty much pick those. They're all native species. Actually, Bill Brown did a lot of design engineering on this wall. They were the design consultants on this wall, and everything is functioning just exactly how we wanted to. And we saw just the first action of a high water event currently. Marvin Howell, this is a turbid discharge off Marvin Howell. You can see how turbid that water is coming down through Marvin Howell. What we had is, this is the first time we've ever hit a clustering clay in a stream bed. That's basically like a pottery clay. Any kind of rainfall to that just instantly turns to turbid discharge, and you can't clean it up. It doesn't settle out any way, shape, or form. So we had to redesign this, and this is actually 3 days after construction. And this is what we're trying to shoot for with natural channel design, is you can barely tell we were here. If that flag rock wasn't there, you wouldn't know anybody even worked there. And that's the point of what we're trying to do with natural channel design, is get the right widths, depths, curves, steps down through here. There's 8 different sets of steps down through there to dissipate that energy, and there's no more turbid discharge. Where are we going from here? Really, this is our list of 2021 projects we're working on currently. So Water Street boat launch, we're still on schedule for that to be implemented this spring. Pines Brook stream bed stabilization. There's a few EWP projects where that's down cut and is threatening the road. We plan on re-elevating and locking that channel to grade again. Braking Motors floodplain reclamation project, that is under CWC design. So CWC is doing the whole demo project. I believe they have Tweedy Excavating working on that currently. They're gonna go through, take out all the parking lots, all the buildings, take out any of the contaminated fill, and then our team already has a design ready for that floodplain reclamation to return the actual outside radius of the Delaware is gonna go back into that about 25 feet. So it's gonna look considerably different. That bump out that's there currently now that's causing flow problems is gonna be removed and brought back in. Grade control projects within the village, we're working on that as a flood commission to look at spots that your water lines and cast and concrete are holding grade in the tributaries. We're trying to figure out ways to protect those better for the next flood. And then our local mitigation projects within the village as the village is ready. Bridge replacements, floodplain reclamations, things like that. This is your conditions along East Brook. That's what it currently looks like when it's modeled. These are your floods from 100-year events through there. This is what Westbrook looks like. To give you an idea, this is where the Big M is in this area. So you can see Westbrook right here. This is Third Brook. Third Brook doesn't, on the 100-year event, doesn't get out of its banks, but the velocities are really high, and it becomes a problem right here on this bridge, right at the auction barn, which we're working on currently. So I just brought it to everybody's attention. This is probably not a complete list of our flood commission members. We put through this together about 20 minutes before I got here. Jessica Rawl and our staff went through and kind of looked at, where have we been membership-wise, and these are our current members here, and here's some of our past members here. So in 10 years, there's been a lot of people involved. There's a lot of credit to these individuals, and I probably missed a few. I know we did when people look at it, but there's a lot of people that we owe credit to get where we are today, because without all their guidance for these last 10 years, we wouldn't have went after the funding so aggressively and wouldn't have done as much in Walton, for sure. And that's our contact information from SWCD. I went through that as fast as I could, because I know everybody's on a time schedule. So does anybody have any questions, any projects, or what we have working forward? Yes, sir.
Did you bring a Danish?
I didn't bring any Danishes tonight. But when we do bring them to the Flood Commission, Butch definitely shows up. And you're probably one of the names that's not on there, right?
It was.
It was.
It's on there.
Yeah.
I always want to, a little nervous about it. I'm like, we throw up a list like that, I'm like, I'm never going to get everybody. But I hope you can see like the benefit of this, because $5 million for a local municipality, and none of this has been local taxpayers' dollars here out of the village or town of Walton. None of your village or town of Walton taxes have gone to those projects. That's all been funding either leveraged from New York City or federal sources or state sources. So that's the power of putting all these people in the same room and trying to solve things.
Would you remind us of what event does water start to gather on Delaware Street?
Okay, so water, when your Walton gauge, when your West Branch gauge is at 14.75 and your East Brook gauge is at 5.5, it starts to turn at the old Lucky Dog and start down Delaware Street. I was fortunate enough with that exact timing of that event was October 1st, I think at 2010. Bob Brown and I stood on that corner and we had live gauge reports at that point in time. It's about your 10 to 15 year recurrence interval is when that happens, which is not a big number as far as a frequency. If you look at a statistical frequency analysis, 10 or 15 versus 100 year, that's a pretty small number. And you can get that quite regularly. So one of the things we hope to do with the realignment of the West Branch there at Breaky Motors is open that up and allow that to be a higher recurrence interval to save some there. The problem we really have is the West Branch, you can't solve for the West Branch 100-year event. And that's a challenge you have, is without doing some massive, massive relocations of big structures, creating huge floodplains, there's no silver bullet for it. The tributaries are different. The tributaries, you put in 120 to 140 foot floodplain in your tributaries, and you can make a big difference. But now you have to have 120 foot span bridges. Think about Benton Ave, that dropped in the last event. It's a brand new structure right now, at the exact same width. That needs to be 120 feet. If that's at 120 feet, how many houses have to be removed to be able to get that alignment through there? And that's really what the community's not ready to take those big drastic actions yet, but I know on paper, Eastbrook, Westbrook, and Third Brook, the 100-year event can basically be solved for. But your West Branch of the Delaware at 330 square miles is just a major challenge. We tried to get the consultants to be able to model that, say, how big would that be? Well, you're looking at everything from Main Street all the way over to through your solid waste facilities to be able to, a floodplain that big on your West Branch. It's huge because there's just not a lot of slope there where your tribs do have the slope. So there is funding available to replace bridges as that comes up, but it's got to make sense for the community. And we've always pushed, it's not a top-down process any way, shape, or form. This is always going to be grassroots from the bottom up. And if the municipality is ready to change a bridge out, like Ogden Street Bridge, we have the opportunity to switch out Ogden Street Bridge. You'd have to move a business owner to make that happen. You could get a floodplain in there. Now that bridge doesn't plug if you change it out. If that happens, do you have water running down West Street now? Because they had 2.5 foot waves in '06 running down through there. It goes through Clingers, goes through that whole entire scenario once it gets plugged on Ogden Street. So that's an opportunity where we look at that real hard and say, are there solutions where you can relocate that, not hurt your tax base, and improve things? And if the answer is yes, and everybody's ready to move forward with that, there's funding available to do that. One of the things I know from a school board standpoint is we looked at real hard on flood-proofing Townsend School. Because Townsend School, once you plug any of those bridge structures there, you have floodwaters right through your kindergarten wing. Your kindergarten wing sits in a 100-year floodplain. So we actually asked for a grant through CWC to do a flood analysis to say, can we flood-proof this structure? And the school was awarded an $80-some-thousand grant to design that flood-proofing. Now we're just waiting to find the funds to be able to get a grant to be able to make that happen and move forward. But that's always going to be in harm's way as long as those bridges upstream have potential of plugging. And FEMA maps, everything all their discharge is based on clean water. And I don't know anybody in this room that's ever seen a clean flood. So you have to take that debris into account, and those maps don't do that.
Great, and regarding the FEMA maps, I think Steve has mentioned as the floodplain manager that much of the Water Street project is not going to be included in those CRS. Do I have that right? Is there a way that can be included to lower those flood insurance rates? So
we're working with Steve Swenson right now, which is a biologist from DEC. I think the only thing we're lacking is certification of the floodplain use for that, if I understood that correctly. Right. So we're working with Steve. Right. We're working with Steve to, if that's the box that's the problem, is to get that check mark on a certified functioning floodplain. We have the means to work that to an end. Right. The rest of the CRS system, what you're trying to get credits for, I'm not positive on.
So is it possible?
So from a flood insurance, you're kind of mixing some things up here. As far as CRS goes, yes, if we get that certified as a functioning, naturally functioning floodplain, then that's going to gain us CRS points, okay? From a flood insurance standpoint, you went from a flood elevation of 6 feet high off of the sidewalk on Delaware Street to 5 feet high off of Delaware Street. In order to get any kind of flood insurance credit, your first floor actually needs to be 1 foot above the base flood elevation. So
So do you think the project is going to, those CRS points are going to be included in your August deadline? For that water?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And so the other question I had, Graydon, with regard to Breaky, are you going to be doing some soil removal there also to lower that bank after you take out that metal wall, your favorite metal wall?
So the sheet pile will be removed. If you look at an aerial standpoint of braking motors, you can see where the sheet pile juts
Yeah.
in. Okay, so the problem with that is when that juts in to the stream, you actually change the power of the stream from the outside bend, which is what Eastbrook needs to mobilize that material coming out of Eastbrook. That's why you get big buildups in the cells of the bridge. You back that off, get that power increase there, it lowers your elevation because your velocities are going to change. We're going to remove fill out of that floodplain, which causes another issue, which I was going to talk to Joe and everybody about, is that we have a profile on 10 that goes from Eastbrook Bridge to Griswold, and it does this, okay? We have to work on a long-term solution with DOT to elevate that profile, because what's gonna happen is you're living behind a false wall, and people are gonna say, it floods quicker, it floods quicker. Okay, we've stood there and we've documented how it floods. Right now, your stormwater system backs up and it boils up out of your stormwater. The thing you gotta remember is that a lot of your stormwater drains to this side of any berm that's in place down at Breaky Motors. So you have a false berm that looks like it's dry, and you're like, that's giving us some sort of protection. It's actually not. You have rain on both sides of that berm, and it's actually causing a problem. What we want to do under design is put a clear barrier from East Brook to Griswold that looks more like not like a retaining wall, but similar, that gives you that same feature there, so people at least have the same comfort level as we didn't change anything from that perspective. But the ultimate solution is that needs to be elevated, and that's going to take a lot of work with DOT to do that. It's only a couple feet, but it needs to be done in order to keep those waters off there, because that's one of the first places to get inundated, and it's just because of the sag in the profile.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I know I went through that fast, and I apologize, but try to get you guys on your meeting too.
So to understand that, you're bringing the wall back. Does that cause any stress to the old Randall's building?
So what we do is, when we look at the new alignment, and I can bring that to you guys, what the new alignment looks like, the new radius actually tails out in the exact same spot. So what you're doing is you're reconnecting that arc that's there at Brandau's, that's the bottom end of the arc, and we're connecting with the upper end of the arc, and in the middle you have this bow. We're just gonna make that a smooth line through there, so it shouldn't be any additional force on Brandau's. The Eastbrook flowing in there as well creates a deadhead of velocities. If you have the stream coming in at this angle and you have the West Branch coming at this angle, where they meet right there, that influence basically slows that water down, which is kind of helping Brandau's because you have a flow this direction kind of protecting them, but we're not changing that alignment into impact Brandau's at all.
So where we are, at this point is fairly well situated to head off a 100-year event, which was the 96 levels. And then from what I recall, they called the 2006 a 500-year event.
I'd have to go through those stats specifically.
This is just what I remember hearing.
Yeah.
They called it a 500-year flood because 10 years later we got another worse one after they called it a 100-year event. And we're probably still a long ways off from being able to head off something like that.
The 500-year event is unattainable in Walton for sure, even if you don't factor in increased precipitation and runoff that's occurring. One of the things that is nice to us in our basin is having actually Frank Ward as a local weather observer. We work with him very closely on our stats. I'm not going to predict what climate change is or global warming or any of those things. We work with actual calculators, and what our calculators are showing us is that we are on an incline. Our measured results at all our stream gauges are increasing. Frank's precipitation that he's been tracking, and everybody has since the late 1800s, is increasing. So what we're not doing is saying we know why this is happening, but what we do in design is we take into account those increases, and they have a pretty dramatic effect. Your 100-year event 10 years ago today is a 66-year event. So our events are driven by stats. The more years you put into it, the more runoff events changes those stats on a regular basis. So those same flows are becoming more frequent. The 100-year event, you have a 1% chance of seeing that every year. That's just stats. That's what the definition of a 100-year event is. So you could have back-to-back 100-year events. It's not likely to happen, but you have a 1% chance every calendar year of seeing that flow. That's all that number is for stats-wise. So we've taken into account increases and what we see and what we design under, but we're just not to a place to say, you know, is carbon emissions driving or anything like that. But we definitely take it into account in all of our models, building, especially under design. Floodplains are the place where you can store that extra water. Everybody thinks you oversize a channel, and that makes a big difference. If you oversize a channel, you increase deposition, now you fill the whole thing. Way worse. So you need a channel that's properly sized to move your water and sediment, and then your extra water's got to go to a floodplain. If you don't have a floodplain, then you're shooting yourself in the foot, and that's what we've been demonstrating on a big scale throughout the municipalities, is you have to have those floodplains behind them. Great.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Graydon. Very informative. All right, while you're picking her up, we'll go through this others. Abstracts, invoices, and payments. Everybody had a chance to take a look at them over?
We have.
What would you like to do with them?
I make the motion that we... After you.
Go ahead.
Make a motion, we approve the abstract and payments.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded to approve them. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Department heads. Mr. Brown.
What do you need?
We need just to
Plug it, I can move everything right out of your way.
Yep. Is it all right? I'll steal Steve's seat for,
Sure.
That's fine.
just a couple quick things. Nothing really new to add to our handout, and we need a copy, extra copy. At the wastewater plant, we did, got the letter back from the state that the I&I funding application was not awarded, so there's a copy of that. We can decide this summer if we want to try again for it. We anticipate a similar timeframe, July-ish for applications. The CBUD, there's a flow meter being replaced. That work's got to be scheduled when flows are down as much as possible, likely when craft's not working for a few days, because the capacity of the facility will be reduced when we're pulling that meter out. We only got so many hours that we can have to do it. Shepherd Street, nothing really new there. We're going to look to redo the drainage some and paving here this coming year. The water system, we talked about a fair amount last meeting. The village was awarded a grant towards replacing water mains throughout the village, as well as some repairs at one of the well houses and the tanks. The initial paperwork went back to the state for that. We're starting to trade some other paperwork back and forth with them. The next formal step will be they will provide items required to close on the financing package. And I kind of attribute it to a mortgage, so when you get the letter from the bank saying you got to have your inspection, you got to have this, that, and the other thing, we'll get a similar type letter from EFC saying we have to do these things. Once they're done, they'll provide you a finance agreement that, in conjunction with your bond counsel, if you want to move forward, that's, you know, when you kind of lock that in. So that's probably a couple months off, but that's the next step there. With the CWC, the village applied for funding to go towards one of the projects that the Flood Commission is working with ultimately replacing the bridge on Third Brook, the culvert on Third Brook at Route 10. CWC came and asked some questions, being that it's a DOT culvert. They want to make sure DOT is kind of part of the plan, you know, going forward. A letter was submitted to DOT, you know, at CWC's request. There's a copy of that letter. I'm missing a page here. Sorry about that. There should have been a second page, or a second part of,
I think you gave it to us.
oh, okay. Just wanted to
Look it over.
It's right here. Yeah, that's the right one. Okay. So that letter went in. I talked to the guy at DOT today. They are sending one back. Basically, the DOT will permit that structure to be replaced. They will require that it be designed to their standards. It can be widened. At this time, they're not anticipating contributing any money to it. towards the project, which is kind of what CWC was asking, so that'll be referred back to CWC when we get the letter and try to move forward. So, the one thing I guess we are asking to move forward tonight, separate from that, the village had been initially awarded funding towards replacement of a portion of the highway department building. $200,000 was awarded from Senator Metzger's office, and it's administered through a dormitory grant. We're starting to trade paperwork back and forth with DASNY. A couple of the things that they ask for, one of them is seeker. So generally with any project a municipality does, and a lot of times in private too, you have to do an environmental review, and depending on what the project scope is, determines what that review, turns into. So there's 3 levels of environmental review. One is a type 1 action, which is a big thing. When if you were building a Walmart in town and you're gonna have to clear 50 acres or something like that, that would likely be a type 1 action. An unlisted action is something less than that may be something kind of on the fringe, that may have an impact on some folks that you want to, get feedback from DEC or DOH or different entities and stuff like that. And then a type 2 action is the lowest level in the seeker world, which is a relatively minor project. And in this case, anything that's under 4,000 square feet, a 4,000 square foot building is considered a type 2 action. Anytime you're redoing an existing building, on the same footprint, it's a type 2 action. Anytime it's a maintenance related project, it's considered a type 2 action. So the current scope is generally to take down the existing building on the one end of the block building, and rebuild it generally on the same footprint. And the size range is just under 3,000 foot, 2,900 and change currently, so it would fall into that type 2 action. So with the type 2 action, generally it's just a order or a resolution of the board to say, we looked at this, it's a small project, it's a type 2 action, we don't have to go forward with doing formal environmental assessments and stuff like that. So that's one motion or one recommendation we have for the board to consider.
I need a motion.
Motion. You want to make a motion to do that?
To pursue a type 2 action.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion made second to approve that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The other part of the paperwork is, so we had identified initially a $400,000 project, which is replacement of the garage. We asked for the full shot from the senator's office. We were fortunate to get $200,000 allotted towards the project. We have to say that we're going to proceed with the project, or not. If we're going to proceed with it, we have to say that we're going to have funds coming from a source to do that. So I think the discussion has been to try to do that with reserves, but ultimately we have to say that we're going to do the project or not. And if we are, then we have to say that we're going to kick in the other half of the money. It doesn't preclude trying to get other financing, but and it'll be, even from today, it'll be a year before we're in a position where we have access to that $200,000, and you can't start the job until you have access to that 200. And by access, I mean the grant agreement. So there'll be a formal contract between DASNY and the village to provide the $200,000. And then we're probably, based on past grants, a year from having that in place. So other funding can be sought. Local labor can be utilized as the village share, but it has to have a value in the range of $200,000.
So it's a motion of intent to accept that part of it.
And then we're going to come up with the rest of it,
Mhm.
one way, shape, or form.
We can
We do
do-
do another grant or some other kind of funding to make up the other 200,000.
Right. So similar to what we've been discussing with the infrastructure grant.
Right.
I'd make the motion.
A second.
Motion made second to go ahead with the grant. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
That's all I had asked for.
Yep. Alrighty. Thank you, sir. Mr. Smith? Oh, I thought you were gonna go for the comfy chair again.
Negative. And I know everybody got the report this month. Any questions at all? I don't know how to do that, Dick. I thought I had that, but.
Anybody have any questions for Butch?
No, it's pretty cut and dry.
All right. Yeah, we did have a couple sewer plug issues we had to take care of. We got those, and the one looked like it was a bunch of rags. We think.
That was up on.
Yeah, that was one on Mead and Liberty, plugged to the one in the intersection, so the sewer was backing up Liberty Street, backing up out Mead Street for a ways.
Now, in your proposed work here, that you're gonna do the 70 and 70 dance?
Yes. Yep. I've been trying like once a week, but it worked a little bit today. You didn't quite hit 70 though.
I'd like to see that.
Couple things to discuss. We need to get permission to send Brian off to a pool operation management training, which apparently is required by New York State. And the cost of that is $325.
Okay, need a motion for that?
I would move that we send Brian for that full training.
You needed a book too, right? There's that.
Yeah, that was with the book.
With the book.
Yeah, the training in the book was $325.
Gotcha.
Okay, got a motion made. We gonna second it?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion made, second, send Brian up to school. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
And the next thing is, we budgeted this year to replace our leaf vacuum. Ours is a 1985 and parts are pretty much unavailable for parts of it. We budgeted for it and we found one that's actually under what we budgeted for at $30,518.15. So I'd like permission to order that.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. Read a question first?
No, I was
Okay. Motion made and
I was
seconded
doing the under
to
budget.
purchase the leaf vacuum. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
That's what I normally do.
That was an under budget whoop.
And today we actually worked at Austin Lincoln Park today. We actually cut down a tree, worked on one of the buildings.
It's like it's almost summertime out there.
It was beautiful. The dance is paying off.
Dance is paying off.
That's it.
That's it. All right. Thanks, Butch.
Thank you.
Jason's not here, and he said he didn't need anything over to the treatment plant right now, so that's good. Mr. Dutcher. Oh, we have two Dutchers. Steve Dutcher, please.
The elder.
The elder. The elder Dutcher.
Feeling elder tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. I'm gonna move this cord, because if I don't, I'm gonna get tangled up in it, and it won't be pretty. Everybody has my report. I also included a year-end summary in there. Any questions on either of those?
Not anything.
So just kind of some old business. The Liberty Street property that I'd issued a ticket for, they've been to court and they're currently, the judge gave them essentially what they call a ACD, is a conditional discharge, 6-month ACD. So, and the reason for that is the day of court, the day of the last court, when I went to inspect, there was several inches of snow on the ground, so I couldn't, plus there were some other issues there that were still violations, so I couldn't say that it was, there were no longer any violations there, so essentially we get, several weeks of no snow and decent weather that things could be cleaned up. The rest of the way I will go and inspect, and I'll write a report to the judge and let him know where the property stands. 2 doors down from that property at 11 Liberty Street, the duplex that's sat there vacant since probably the flood of '96 and has not been touched, has been a headache over the years. I've addressed it several times. The boarding that I required to be put on the windows was put on there and not really treated with anything, so now the weather has destroyed the boarding. That's all falling off. I sent the property owner a certified letter. I haven't received a return receipt card yet. I'm expecting to get the entire envelope back. They have not really been cooperative in the past. So I'm bringing this up now because at some point I'm probably going to have to ask to spend some sort of money on addressing that property. Whether it be to hire a contractor to go in and board up the windows, or, you know, whatever the resolution needs to be there. So just giving you that for food for thought, and when you're out in your travels, you can drive by and get a look at it for yourself, see what we're dealing with there. Other than that, a handful of other complaints in January, some of which, it always seems to be January. I think people get tired of winter and get grumpy or something, but a couple of them have been taken care of. A couple of the other ones, there's letters out, waiting to see what's going to happen. So.
They didn't really look at the total numbers of it. How's the sidewalk clearing been? People been taking care of them better this year?
They haven't been horrible. I think I've cited once or twice this year. I haven't been out. It's just scheduling and, you know, that sort of thing. But yeah, they haven't been horrible. And it usually every year it's the first snowstorm or two, there's 24 people on the list. And then as the winter wears on, it usually gets weeded down to a handful of vacant properties and, you know, people that just otherwise refuse to shovel for whatever reason. But hasn't been in too bad a shape this year, and I haven't really had any phone calls about them either, so that's good.
We don't get more snow.
Yeah. Well, if Butch keeps doing the dance, we won't have any more snow.
It's all your fault then. I want snow. Yes.
I'll hold off for
All right.
Any more questions for Steve? Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Chief?
I promise I won't knock the camera over this time. So you guys got a copy of this month's police report? We were able to complete on time the lifespan grant.
Okay.
Rich was really instrumental in that whole thing. Just want to let you guys know that he was a big help. Came in and got it started and got it done. It was a long process. So we'll see. They should be notifying us sometime around April. That's what they said. So be expecting to hear about that.
That's good, though. At least they accepted it.
Yeah,
That's one good
right.
thing.
Right, yep, so everything was accepted, everything was good. Like I said, last meeting, we're still scheduled for the Narcan training on the 13th. That'll be in Delhi. There is a FTO school the end of February. It's 24th through the 27th. Cost is $125. Looking to see if we could send Logan through that. With Brian leaving, he's scheduled to be retiring this spring. So we'll need another field training officer that'll enable any new hires that are coming in, they'll be able to be signed off right at our police department instead of finding another police department to sign off on the field training.
That's how much?
$125.
And where is
It's
that?
cheaper than paying somebody else to do it.
Right, it's in Delhi.
How many days was it again?
It's 4 days.
4 days.
Yep.
Okay, let's
I'd make
do
a
this one.
motion to approve the expense.
I'd second.
Motion made and seconded to approve sending to Logan to field training officer class. All in favor?
Hi.
Opposed? Carried.
And last thing I have is a couple of the officers are due for vest replacement. So there is state and federal grants. The federal's for the new hires. They pretty much give you the new vest. For the reoccurrence, though, it's usually a 50% state match, so we would have to come up with the other 50%, which I believe is around $400, $500 per vest. And both Logan and Devon are up for their 5-year replacement, which is about how long those vests last. So I'm looking for permission to at least apply for the grants for that, and to secure at least 2 vests for both Logan and Devon coming up.
Right. I make a motion.
Second.
Motion, excuse me, motion made seconded to purchase 2 vests and to have him look into the grants to offset the cost. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
And I think other than some contract stuff for executive session, that's all I have for you guys tonight.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay?
Joe, did you?
Trustee reports.
That's included in your budget for this year.
Yes.
Trustee report.
Meeting and going over the budgets for the park this year. And we've budgeted for swimming lesson supervisors, weekend supervisors, head guards, on the other side guards, lifeguards, basketball, arts and crafts, field hockey, tennis, mowers, gotta cut the grass. We're gonna see about repaving and resurfacing the tennis courts. There's gonna be a new roof on the smaller pavilion, some siding on the baseball building, some resurface work on the walking trail around the park and cleanup, a couple of swing sets, painting the skating building. Obviously, we have the bench money that we got from Joey Yamber last month. That's awesome. And some mulch around the playground commitment. Or excuse me, mulch around the playground equipment. And there's a few other irons in the fire, but we're still working on the rest of it. We've got a timeline for the theater, for the balcony project. They already, in the spring of 2019, they worked on the design and removal. Moving up to currently, January of 2020 was the removal of the old seats. Those have been removed. The floors are being refinished and the electrical work will be begun shortly. During the winter of 2020, the new console and counter will be designed and the floors will be sanded and finished. In spring of 2020, the high-top tables and stools will be installed and the console and counter built and installed. In summer of 2020, painting and final sound and lighting equipment installed, electrical work completed. Also summer of 2020, seats ordered and installed, carpet and railings installed. Hoping in August of 2020 for an unveiling of the final project in the booth at the county fair with a photo history. And hoping for September of 2020 for a ribbon cutting and open house with naming of the renovated balcony. Of course, this is tentative, but this is what we're hoping.
I didn't hear anything in there about the seat that's supposed to be mine up there in the balcony. But I remember that there's going to have to be a plaque on one of them from me.
I must have left that out.
You left that out, I'm sure you
They
did.
are keeping up with code enforcement.
But that's my report.
Yeah, they've been in touch with Steve, last I knew.
Okay.
At the
They
beginning, yes.
need to be keeping up with
Well,
you?
at this point, and we discussed it earlier, at this point, basically what I need to be concerned about is whether or not whatever electric that they do gets inspected.
Okay,
And that's a third-party inspector, so.
yep.
I just need to know that that's done. And then beyond that, I just want to, check the placement of the tables and stools as we discussed before.
Yep. So,
Just basically go in, essentially a final inspection, verify dimensions and all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
So,
if you bring that back to them, make sure that they
Yep,
keep up with the code enforcement. Okay,
absolutely.
good deal. Anything else?
It's easier to do it first than after.
No, sir, that concludes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Eric?
Well, so I was in contact with Representative Delgado's office about trying to find additional funding for the water infrastructure grant. One of the options that they kicked back to us was the USDA avenue for funding, but we discussed that, Bill and everyone wouldn't be eligible for that stream of funding. But the hunt continues, so I'm still working on trying to find more options for that. On the zoning end of things, and what Graydon had touched upon earlier, the progress with Breakies, we should see that demolition conclude rather quickly. Yeah, that's about it.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Doig?
The only thing I have is with the police, have to do that in executive session.
Contract. Okay. Nothing for me. The election inspector appointments. Jody has,
Anything either?
pardon me?
You didn't have anything? Okay.
Everything's been going through everybody else,
Well.
which is good.
Okay. Okay, I am recommending that we have Maxine Locker be the head inspector, and Joanne Pomeroy as a returning inspector, and new this year would be Amy Stanton. So I'm recommending those three ladies to do the election on March 18th. So I just need a motion from you guys if you agree.
I'll make a motion.
I will second the motion.
Motion made second to agree with that list. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next, I know Jody and I have talked a little bit about, we got the CDBG program, which is through Stellar Opportunities. And
They
we-
administer the
They
program
administrated
for
the
us, yeah.
program, but we have to decide on what type of program we want to look forward to, and I think there's 3 of them, right, Jody, that we could
Well,
look at?
at this point, she just needs to know if you guys would like to submit an application, and it could be for a first-time home buyer, rehab, or a combination of the two. But she just wanted the board's feelings to see if you guys wanted to try to do another application.
I think we should.
I think we
but-
should.
I think we should go for both.
Okay. Need a motion on that.
I would move to go with the rehab and first-time homebuyer applications.
Well, if we do 2 of them, she said lots of times you're competing against yourself, and she doesn't usually recommend submitting 2. But that can be talked at another time. She just needs to
Should
know
just
right
know that
now.
we want to go forward with one of
Intent,
those.
right.
Our intent is, yes, we'll go forward with one of them, so that's what I need to have your motion state.
Well, then I would certainly move to display our intent.
Okay.
Okay.
Second?
Motion made second to go ahead with this, I gotta get this right again, CDBG program. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Ladies and gentlemen, we are done.
I had one more thing.
You do? Uh-oh.
We
It
have-
wasn't on my list.
No. I think Steve Cian was gonna take care of it,
Oh,
but
was
he
he? Okay.
wasn't here. 28 Fitch Street, the Harrisons combined 2 lots, which combined 26 and 28, and he is requesting a change in his sewer units. So instead of paying 1.75, it'd be going down to 1 because he now just has 1 lot. So we just need board to
Approval to
make
make
that
it
a
one,
motion.
make it one lot, one sewer usage.
Correct.
Okay.
I'll make the motion.
Now, he had that, what?
He combined his 2 lots together so that he has.
Did he get it officially done? That it
Yes, he
was
went through the
property? Okay,
planning
he did go
board.
through the-
Yep.
Okay. That would- A lot of people like to, if you don't go through the paperwork, it doesn't happen.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's gone through the paperwork. Ask Steve.
Yes, we have.
Okay.
Okay, so I had one motion.
I'll second.
Motion made second to make him 1 sewer unit. All in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Anything else?
That's all I had.
All right. We are going to go to executive session to talk over police contracts, so thank you all very much.
I need a motion for that, please.
Need a motion to go to executive session?
Make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Do you anticipate taking action after executive session?
I don't believe so yet,
Okay.
because it's still being hashed.
What time is it?